A statement from the Russian Foreign Ministry, a September 15th statement alerting the America, which supplies Ukraine Cross-A with long-range missiles redline, and if the United States were to, if they followed through, they'd start a party. More about the conflict in today's video. Hello and welcome to KYC News. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. The Russo-Ukrainian conflict included constant fighting between the two worldwide since 2014. The tension was due to the political situation of Donbass and Crimea. Two objects at the time were acknowledged on a global scale as components of Ukraine, which Russia annexed in 2014. Crimea and the use of armed troops in Donbass, with Ukraine-related allegations financing and providing military equipment. Russian rebels are becoming more active. Former Soviet Union intensified the conflict by deploying armed forces in February of 2022 troops in Ukraine's interior. The invasion of Ukraine by Russia was fiercely. Much of the international community condemned a claim made by the erstwhile Soviet Union of attacking the sovereignty of Ukraine. A number of international laws, as well, Russian troops advanced further into Ukraine's southern and eastern regions. The U.S. started adopting playing a proactive part in the current conflict by supplying military units to Kyiv. They were accompanied by personnel and weaponry. The participation of Germany, France, and Europe as a whole. United States President in May 2022, Joe Biden wrote an opinion piece for the New. According to York Times, the U.S. military was thinking about sending a long-range launching rockets and missiles into Ukraine. The $700 million arms deal lately between the two countries. The U.S. has provided Ukraine with rockets launched by GMLRS from HIMARS launchers that can hit up to 80 targets. The launchers on kilometers. HIMARS can also to shoot longer-range ammunition. Army tactical missile defense systems, missiles that have a maximum range of 300 miles away. A senior official, however, Ukraine refuses to comment on whether the U.S. had provided Kyiv using tactical missile systems for the Army. Maria, Russian government spokeswoman Zakharova, according to the Foreign Ministry, Russia has every right to protect oneself from alluding to the August enemy war, the ninth instance in which rockets were fired from the Saki Russian airbase. About 200 rockets were launched. Few km away from Ukrainian territory, the Crimea Peninsula, to the north of which in 2014, Russia annexed Washington. Alleged that Ukraine had consented any of the rockets themselves into action unless Russian troops advanced. In Biden's opinion piece, the only genuine how to resolve the Russo-Ukrainian conflict, however, diplomacy was used to resolve the conflict continually. The United States would provide superior military hardware to give Ukraine more clout as their ally. The only way is at the negotiation table. Biden went on to say that Ukraine would permit it to employ the rockets and missiles. If the latter, it would be against Russia. First expands its military operations. Ukraine would be completely independent. Protect oneself. The Army tactical missile concept. Interestingly, system technology came following what the United States thought Russian reneging on the Warsaw Pact was imminent. Pact regarded the Cold War as having the technology had the ability to heat up. However, it was put on hold for a while, until it was considered required in 2007 in terms of U.S. defense. Missiles recently renovated with superior methods of navigation, restrained motors, and airburst proximity sensors. Explosion in the U.S. and elsewhere. However, Ukrainian allies have sending military care packages against the nation. Given the continuous disputes as defined by the international community, Kyiv has not yet made any actual use of any of their weapons, having received for its part the U.S. has extended a 19th. The one for Ukraine's military is that we just stated comprises additional weapons for Ukraine's 16 high-mobility rocket systems for artillery or rounds and HIMARS anti-armor systems. Missiles that counter radar and mine clearance capacities are another facet of the fresh aid package. Will improve Ukraine's with one's anti-armor powers. Optically tracked launch of thousands of tubes. TOW missiles are wirelessly guided missiles and 1,000 javelins. anti-armor rifle rounds and missiles, and despite the numerous million-dollar military agreement between the two nations, Ukraine has a long list of requests. More advanced military hardware. Senior representative of the Ministry of Defense stated that the U.S. made the decision to pause before providing the long range, considering that Ukraine has rockets been thriving without them, and are in fact viewing Ukrainians on a successfully weakening the everyday the senior U.S. defense against Russian forces. A representative stated on Friday that the expense having been imposed on Russia, according to Moscow. Western Ukraine, primarily allies of the United States, are making use of the ongoing battle between the two countries to advance their own Russian propaganda in the West. Statement has been brought up at several international gatherings with the intention of that the target of international sanctions there would be a lifting of the erstwhile Soviet Union. Nevertheless, the U.S. has called these claims are unfounded and untrue. Ukraine has received supplies from Germany, rockets and more armored vehicles launchers, particularly 2 Mars, 2 numerous rocket launchers, 250 armored Dingo troops and missiles. Ukrainian Foreign Minister carriers. However, Dmytro Kuleba has received a lot of critique of Germany's position on the continuing conflict as background. Berlin, yet to forge an alliance with Ukraine, has broken multiple military agreements made in the nation. As Kuleba said, any defense offered by Berlin for not having delivered superior air defense military hardware to Ukraine, but the missiles are unreasonable. According to only senior defense officials, Ukraine's mobility should be increased in view of the current strife, particularly to date since the advance of Russian forces. This continues our journey into southern Ukraine, catering for Ukrainians' custom what they require when they require it. A representative added that this isn't the end. It's fascinating to note that the USA earlier declined to provide for Ukraine tactical missile systems for the Army, rockets and long-range missiles. This might have been connected to the United States' position on one of two issues has contributed more than $50 billion. Pieces of military hardware valued at personnel going to Ukraine, or the military ministry is getting ready for a conflict with China over the unjust currently occupying Taiwan, but the U.S. has made the decision to join the Army agreement for a tactical missile system, encouraged by U.S. senators who reportedly weren't troubled by border disputes. The momentum between the nations has swung significantly in favor of Ukraine, and they are the ones who really are declaring that they are in charge. Former U.S. Ben Hodges, commander of the Army in Europe. Evidence for this was the fact that Ukrainian armies moved hundreds of miles, capturing a large number of Russian firearms, ammunition, and also officials from Ukraine claimed tens of thousands of Russian troops during a week's time. Concurrently with Congress declared that the American military will depart, moving the Taiwan Policy Act forward, which would be able to see through a multi-billion arms deal with Taiwan and delivery of perhaps advanced military equipment. Army tactical missile included long-range missile system to the occupied country and uphold United States One China policy. According to the bill, that Taiwan would afterwards be handled as a significant non-NATO ally. In the past, the United States asserted that it had maintaining diplomatic ties with Taiwan as the U.S. increased its level of combat involvement in respect to the confrontation with Russia. President Vladimir Putin of Russia and Xi Jinping, the president of China, held their first meeting in person since the beginning of the war in Shanghai summit. The collaboration organization crisis brought on by Russia's armed forces. Russian disaster was on display. However, the military fiasco has sparked India and China, both cause anxiety. Countries that have remained impartial throughout the ongoing fight, although without a doubt been pushed closer to the former Soviet Union, to the United States participation. Putin spoke with the Indian Narendra Modi as Prime Minister on the phone. He acknowledged his understanding the latter's worries conveyed considering the ongoing war, but hopes that the issues will be resolved formally. Discussed during a meeting between the two. Senior fellow Alexander Gabuev during the Carnegie Endowment for it was questioned by International Peace if whether China will make a public ally in light of the Taiwan Policy Act. Russia. He continued by explaining that while Xi would gain from Putin's administration and Russia would have a significant losses in a government that supports the West, what might he do in the erstwhile Soviet Union? truly do realistically, Ukraine might take back the majority of occupied territory in Russia territory with its air defense offensive weapons of war. Kyiv captured the Kremlin took early this month by surprise sovereignty over much of Russian-occupied territory. Ukraine's southern regions recording in thousands of alleged soldiers and capturing Russian defensive systems and weapons. The region now. Ukraine has been identified as a probable owner of tactical missile system for the army. Modern long-range missile system operators like Greece, South Bahrain, Korea, Turkey, United Arab Emirates. Currently, the United States and Emirates. The nation produces long-range Lockheed rockets at its home base Martin, Taiwan, Austria, and Poland under the heading Future Operators. Thank you for watching today's video. Observing, tell us in the comments below. Please share your thoughts on the ongoing conflict between Kyiv and Moscow. Give this video a thumbs up and join the channel. More details.